the name Corpse Paint came about.
For me, it's just like an electric jolt.
It's the real ugly side of humanity, and their music sounds like it.
I always wanted to be a band that was approachable to people, that was just regular-ass people. Yo, what's up? So before I start this episode, I want to bring up two really good friends of mine that I've met along the way. They've been the backbone and really the biggest supporters of this podcast since day one. Everything visually you see with this podcast has been done by Wither Designs and Benny Bones Art, and it could be your band next. Check them out on social media, get yourself something unique and original, and yeah, let's do this.
Hit me with like one album that changed your perspective on the game of drums when it comes to death metal. I'm curious.
Oh, when it comes to death metal, I think that it would have to be. But okay. So two albums had a huge impact on me in the time frame where I sort of rediscovered metal in the early 90s. And those two albums were Sepultura's Arise and Fear Factory's Soul of a New Machine.
Nice.
So, I was, I'm going to be aging myself here. Okay. So, I got into metal in the early 80s, growing up in the Bay Area. We were privy to Possessed. You mentioned Jeff Becerra, and Metallica, Exodus, Death Angel. And so I was going to those shows as a teenager in the in the early to mid 80s. And then in the late 80s, 89, 90, I was a total Gilman Street punk.
Oh, okay.
And then it was those two albums, 91, 92, that sort of brought it back for me. Not that I strayed completely. I mean, I didn't. It was just sort of at that time. It was kind of a funny time for metal. Maybe it was just me, but it seems like the bands that I was listening to and the bands that we were playing in, we were going for something more than just that Bay Area thrash, or maybe less, but it was, different types of influences and things like that. But those two albums made me realize I was missing something in that 2 or 3 year period. So, and then, I wasn't playing drums much in, playing in metal bands until I joined Acephalix.
Oh, wow.
And that was in 2008. I've been in Acephalix for almost 15 years. Yeah. So, my oldest, closest, best friend, I grew up with since, the early 80s when we met, and went to school with, played in bands with. He and I were in a band together in the 90s called Transition. I was the vocalist, not the drummer. We had an album come out on SST Records, and he had joined Acephalix in late 2007 and called me up and was like, I think you can play drums for this band. I think you can do it. It's straight ahead crust punk. Yeah. And then go ahead. I'm sorry, John. I'm rambling.
No, you're good. No, I mean, I definitely hear, I think that's one of the coolest things about this band is like it's very like pumbling, like straightforward, but I love the punk influence to it. And I think that's what grabs me towards this band in specific. There's a lot of death metal bands that are just very like, I don't want to call them over the top, but like sometimes it just becomes this freaking wall of noise, and that's good when it comes down to like bands like Portal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to death metal, I'm just trying to hear some like groove and punk influence, which is definitely why I'm here talking to you.
Killer. Yeah. I mean, there isn't a huge difference to me. And when I mean, of course, in the old days, and I lived in that punk versus metal era, briefly. But a couple of the bands that really caught me as a kid, as a young teenager, or if we're going back to talking about specific albums, DRI's Dealing With It, when that came out, it totally blew my mind, because it was as fast and as heavy as any of the metal that was out at that time. But the vocals were just, Kurt Breck is such a poet, and there's so much emotion in it, and so, yeah, I mean, yes, Acephalix started out as a crust punk band influenced by some of the crusty bands like Sacrilege, not the Bay Area Sacrilege, but the British Sacrilege, and Amoebics and stuff like that, and then sort of morphed into, very quickly, but it was still a metamorphosis into a death metal band. But even going back to the 80s, there were bands that were punk and metal at the same time. 20 years before Acephalix was formed. But I agree with you. And there is a punk feeling on stage, and there's nothing. We're not technical. We're not flashy players. We're not virtuosic players, there's talent and like that, but it's just, and particularly with the drums, I mean, I'm just doing I'm no Pete Sandoval. I mean, I'm much more Tommy Lee than Pete Sandoval. So
there you go. That's funny, man. That's funny that you bring him up, because even though Tommy Lee is a simplistic player, I think 4 years ago, I saw him on like a roller coaster, man. He had that whole setup where he was playing upside down.
Right. Yeah.
Did you see him on that tour?
No, I mean, I've seen, the videos of him flipping upside down.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
So, man.
Yeah, but much more of a straight ahead kind of hard hitting style. And then, the drums haven't changed all that much from the first Acephalix, 7-inch that came out in early 2009. Other things have changed, the vocals are different, and, a number of things have changed. Members have changed, of course, but drumming is still, crust punk / death metal drumming, really.
Yeah. So bringing it back to my question about the album, oh man, Bloodbath's Nightmares Made of Flesh. That was the one that did it for me. How about you? Was that an album that hit you hard?
I've liked a number of different things by them, and they have that super, the guitar tone is Dan Swano, right? Produces them, I think, or did at one point, and was playing in it too. But yeah, it's they're heavy, and there's such a massive sound to the recordings, and I think there's some HM2 pedal in there.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, they have an HM2. Like, oh man, I couldn't speak higher about that band. Like, they're like a good mix between the grooviness, the crust element, but then they have like these like hooks, man. Like the hooks that you just like chant back.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Well,
and
you're I'm inspired to revisit that album now because it's
yeah, you'll definitely have to check it out. But I mean, so where are you guys at right now? I know your newest record was freaking fantastic.
No, thank you.
I was at first I was like, okay, more death metal, and then I saw the cover, right? And then I'm like, okay, this is something special. Like I don't even know what it is, what it represents, but it's just like it caught my attention real quick.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you like it. We really like it. It's different. The writing process was a little different. The writer was different this time around. But the cover, yeah, I think really suits it. So, we had an idea in mind, and I'm pretty sure it was Dan, the vocalist, who had this idea in mind of the soul violently leaving the body.
Okay.
And so, I was just looking around at different artists and, different photo galleries of different artists. And his artwork really spoke to all of us, I think. And that really is sort of what that particular piece looks like. So we licensed it. He didn't paint it for us. It was a painting that he had finished pretty recently, though. And yeah, it really made sense. It really suits the music. This album isn't as epic as the last record was. This has much shorter. The lengths of the songs are shorter. There are more songs, more shorter songs. There's more up tempo stuff on it, and that cover just is sort of. It's just vicious. I think it really.
Yeah,
suits.
it was like the embodiment of the music. Like I looked at it and I was like, this. There couldn't have been a better match for the artwork. You know how sometimes like you listen to a record and you look at the artwork and you're like, this just doesn't match at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was like
that's what you want, right? I mean, that's what you want is the visual to go along with the music. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate your saying that. I think it does really suit the music. And most of the record was written at the time that we found that artist and found that piece.
nice. Yeah, no, I was gonna ask because I'm one of those weird people where I like the art has to like come before sometimes. Like it like kind of reflects on what I'm gonna try to make with art, like the music.
Yeah.
So I was curious on where this piece came in throughout the making of the album or after.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to remember exactly because things were moving fast at that time. I know that we had the artwork as we entered the studio for sure. And by the way, the artist is Ettore Aldo Del Vigo, and he lives in Italy.
Nice. Italy,
And
okay.
yeah, I remember when we went into the studio that we showed the artwork to Greg Wilkinson, who recorded the album. So,
Great guy.
but I don't think it was long before that. Sorry,
Yeah,
go.
I said Greg is a great guy. He's a very smart person. From my conversation I had on this podcast with him, he's a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, he really
Yeah, what did
is.
he say when you showed him the art?
I think he got it, and I think he liked it. I mean, I just showed it to him on on my phone, but yeah, I think he saw that it suited what we were doing, and just you're mentioning Greg. I mean, he, everybody knows that he gets that sound, and that he gets that, ultra heavy, but crisp and clear death metal sound. But the thing that sort of is the most relevant to me when it comes to being in sessions with him and working on an album with him is that his demeanor is just so pleasant.
Yeah, no, I'm curious about your experience too, because it's cool hearing somebody so passionate on the podcast be a studio engineer, and then actually hearing the artists say how great the experience is. So yeah, how was it?
Well, it was amazing, and we've worked with him a bunch of times. So going way back, so right after I joined the band, he recorded the session that ended up being on the first single. They had a couple of demos before I joined, but the first sort of, quote, official, unquote, release that was put out by a label, Prank Records, was the 4-song 7-inch, and he recorded that. And that was way back in 2009. So we've been working with him for a number of years. And then, everybody in the band is in or has been in some other band that's recorded with him, in many cases, multiple times as well. So, he's family, and it's just, the process is smooth, and like I said, his demeanor is just incredibly calming, and he's such
calming for such intense music.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just, yeah, I've always felt comfortable, and right, it's often a situation where you're pretty anxious. I mean, I know I am, going.
Oh yeah, man. I could just imagine, like, I don't know how you guys do it, but I was just at like a grindcore session where I was filming them, and they did the drums all in one day. Is that what you do?
Pretty much, yeah. In fact, not pretty much, always, yeah. I mean, I think what we've done the last 2 times. So we also recorded our last record, Decreation, with him. That came out in 2017. So yeah, in both instances, we got in there, I set up, I finished the drums in one day, and then kind of stayed set up, and then just to 100% make sure that there was nothing extra to do the next morning. And I think in both of those instances, there wasn't. You know what I mean? We had knocked it out in a day, and you want to be efficient with time. And Greg allows for that, because he's such a pro, and if you've been in there several times, you know what you're going to get, how it's going to go, and there are no surprises. And but yeah, the anxiety going in for me personally is real. And, nothing is going to completely quell that other than getting in there and doing it and doing well and all that. But he is incredibly comforting, his
Yeah.
affect is very smooth and professional, and he's like family to us too. So all
Yeah.
of
Well,
these other bands that we're related to have recorded with him as well.
I think that definitely shines through on the record too, because I mean, it's different. Like, um, it's different when you hear a band that's kind of like not as comfortable with the engineer, because some of the transitions might be rushed, like certain little things you could tell at the end product where you're like, damn, the sound the sound guy really just didn't care about the mix, or
Yeah,
you know how it is,
yeah,
man. Like,
for sure,
um,
for sure,
but
yeah.
I mean, do you have any funny stories that you have, like recording in a studio? Because I'll tell you mine, man. There
Right.
was one time I went into a studio playing guitar, and I swear to God, I just couldn't play my parts like
Yeah,
the whole session.
yeah.
I just
I,
blanked.
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's the thing that keeps coming to mind is not particularly great, but when we recorded Decreation, I remember that Greg's finger got stuck in a door.
Jesus.
Yeah. So our original guitarist Kyle House, I think closed the door on his finger. But so that was painful, but it was okay. Nothing broken. But
he's
yeah,
like he's like trying to use his keyboard with one hand. That's funny.
yeah, right. It was scary for a moment, but it worked out okay. I mean, with Greg, it's pretty fast, and I feel like this album, the Theothanatology, I feel like it really just kind of flew by. Not just the recording and mixing, but the process of putting the layout together. It just seemed to kind of fly. And I mean, I think we were only in there with him one time to mix, and everything else was kind of back and forth, sending files via email and stuff. So
What that's definitely cool, because you have that um yeah, you got that sense of trust. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, goddamn, he's an autopsy now. I just saw him at
right,
Maryland Death Fest, and
yeah,
like, um, yeah, the things that Autopsy is releasing nowadays doesn't get better than that, too. Like,
I love their new album. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, and he did some writing on it, and well, he didn't record it though, but yeah, of course they're one of the greatest of all time, and even better now that he's in it. I mean, he just any band that has him is just you're stoked, you're lucky,
yeah, no, it
because
was
of
super tight, man. Because when I saw them in Maryland, I think I talked to him like a month before,
yeah.
and then I see him at freaking Maryland Death Fest just shredding it up. I'm like, man, that bass tone is freaking awesome. But
Yeah. Oh yeah,
so
for sure. And then he plays guitar in Deathgrave,
yeah,
and they're amazing. And he's just as much of a shredder on guitar.
so I gotta ask you this
Yeah.
question. This is gonna be a hard one, but
All right.
where or what are your thoughts on the current state of death metal?
I mean, it's very popular, you know. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. we were playing shows as a death metal band in, 2016, 17, 18, 19. So, I mean, that's not that long ago, but it wasn't like this. So we played 2 festivals over the past few months. We played Northwest Terror Fest in Seattle and then Killtown Death Fest in Copenhagen. And, it was pretty ridiculous. Northwest Terror Fest isn't an all death metal festival, but Killtown Death Fest is. And it's just, very, very, very popular. And it seems like a few bands who've come out fairly recently have just gotten big very quickly. And I'm not talking about bands that, have some kind of pop element to them or something like that, because things like that get big, of course, but, or can. But in the last few years, it was like, like Gate Creeper got big. And like right now, Undeath is just.
Yeah, they're right down the street from me.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah,
they came out of nowhere and were super popular. Maybe they didn't come out of nowhere. I shouldn't say that because
well, let me put this in a funny perspective. Anytime people bring up Undeath, I used to be in a really crappy deathcore band. Like I think like 4 years was kind of when they started, or a couple years ago.
Okay.
And it was a Monday night, and we played with Undeath, and I think it was like 1 a.m, and the only people that were watching them was my band.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, there you have it. So I'm right.
And it's crazy, man, to see Undeath like just crushing it. Like they just got done with that co-headlining tour. And I'm like, headlining? What the? I'm like, what? What has happened?
So and they're great, and I love their record, and they've, given us props, for the new record, and so there's mutual appreciation. But yeah, I mean, I had never heard of them. I probably had never heard of them, a year ago. So, and East Coast, West Coast, we're not as in tune with what's going on. At least I'm not. I can't speak for the other members of the band, but I'm not, in the East Coast scene.
Right.
Here in the Bay Area, I mean, you know everybody and you know every band. And as soon as a band comes out, you know them because there likely are members that it's 2 degrees of separation with basically every death metal band in the Bay Area. So
yeah, I was gonna ask how it is out there, man, because there's a lot of artists that are in California, and sometimes there's like mixed reviews when I talk to people from out in that area.
Mixed reviews about what? About the way the scene is, or
just like like how tight knit the scene is,
Yeah,
if they enjoy it or not. I don't know.
I feel like it's pretty tight knit. There are a lot of folks in multiple bands, so that makes things tight knit, right? Because you meet somebody who plays in a band, and it's likely that somebody in their band, you already know from some other band, and I mean, I think it is tight knit, and the clubs come and go, which is a bummer and kind of annoying. But there are plenty of good clubs right now, and there are a number of people who are booking shows and promoting shows. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious about what the negative things
Well, I think
that you've
I
heard.
remember it was more when I was talking about like thrash with people from California, because I mean, I think it was just um their perspective on like back in the day when thrash was super popular
Yeah.
versus now.
Well, I mean, pretty much every single one of those bands from back in the day is still together, or is back together. So, but that is a little bit different than sort of the underground extreme metal, death metal, black metal scene. It is a little bit different with the old school thrash. So it's funny that you're we're sort of talking about a comparison between the two, because the show that I went to about a month ago, Possessed. They've come up in our conversation a number of times here, but Possessed was the headliner, and then it was Necrot's big, sort of comeback show. They were the support band, and then right before them was Deathgrave, which Greg Wilkinson plays guitar in, and so because you had Possessed, now Possessed is not the Possessed of 1985, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
Jeff Becerra, is the only member from that era, the Seven Churches Beyond the Gates era. But it really was a mix of those two scenes in many ways. And this woman, Amy Strong, who put the show on, I mean, she's lived in both worlds for sure. And I feel like I have too, having, as I mentioned earlier, seen those shows in the 80s. And I was in bands in the 80s. We never got, super popular. And I was in bands outside of that scene as well. But, I opened for Death Angel and Violence and Forbidden and Blind Illusion and all those bands. So this show a month ago, I mean, truly was a mix. You had folks my age, who lived the 80s thrash scene. I was a teenager in the 80s, like I mentioned. So, yeah. And then you have, all of these young death metal fans and folks who are quite a bit younger than me, playing in death metal bands. So there were a few old schoolers at that show, and we were like, yeah, look at this. This is really a mix of those two. But,
yeah.
Exodus and Testament and Death Angel, those bands are they're at a different level. They're not, it's a little bit different, They don't mix often, but it's fun when they do.
Right. And I think that's funny too, because I was just at a show in Florida. It was just like a parking garage show, and there was like 5 different genres playing at this show, and it was so fun. Like it was probably like one of the most fun shows I've been at in a long time. Because like I didn't know what to expect.
So what was it? So there was like a death metal band playing and a black metal band playing, or what?
There was a death metal band, there was a thrash metal band, there was like an emo punk band, like you name it.
Yeah,
it was there. And I just think that is definitely the one thing that it's brought up a lot on this podcast that people are kind of grateful for, is the mixed shows, and I love it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, a festival like Northwest Terror Fest that I mentioned that we played in early August in Seattle. You had a lot of different flavors there. Like Layla Abdul Rauf played. She's the guitarist and co-vocalist in Vastum with Dan, and she did her solo set of sort of dark, ambient, semi-electronic music, though she sings and plays a trumpet too. But I mean, it was the reception that she got was intense in between two, in between a thrash band and a death metal band or whatever, So yeah, it's a little bit different from when I was a kid, when you'd be like, fuck you, what the fuck is this or whatever, it's a little bit different now. And folks,
Now,
that she is in Gaston too, so it's a little different, but
so
yeah,
so here's the question though. If you were to go, if you were to revert to being a kid nowadays with the acceptance, would you do that over being a thrash kid in the 80s or no?
I mean, I feel like I was accepting, and I always had other likes. There, I had my tastes in music have always been pretty vast and varied, and even the band that I was in a thrash band in 1986, 87, 88, and we morphed into more of a kind of a post-punk band with a little bit of a pop edge. And so no, I was interested in, and a band like Death Angel, who came out with one of the greatest thrash albums of all time, and then by their second album was already doing some stuff that didn't totally gel with what was going on in thrash in 1987, 1988. There were acoustic songs on there. There was some kind of like slap bass parts. So I feel like the Bay Area was there. There was people were able to take risks in bands to some degree. So, when I said like, oh, fuck you, I mean, I'm remembering this particular show, which was Metallica, Armored Saint, and the opening band was this band Control. Okay. So I think I've got this right. No, I think it was Metallica, Armored Saint, and Death Angel. Okay, it was Exodus. Their first album, Bonded by Blood, just came out. Megadeth, their first album, Killing Is My Business, had just come out. And then the opening band was Control, this band Control. And Control had a little bit more of a straight-ahead rock vibe. And people were anticipating Megadeth and then Exodus, both with their debut albums had just come out in the last month. And I mean, the crowd destroyed Control. You know what I mean? So, yeah, maybe these days it would be a little bit different. I mean, that was also, 1986 or something. But there definitely were times when crowds were not accepting of bands that happened to be on stage.
Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to bring up too, you brought up California. I remember going to Dark Realm Records as a kid.
Okay.
Have you been there?
No. What, Dark Realm Records? Where's that?
It's Sadistic Intent?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's their record store in Downey, California.
Okay. Downey. Here we go. Downey. I know that's where my prescriptions from Kaiser are shipped from. That's all I know about Downey.
Man, you should check it out. Holy hell, you've never been to Dark Realm Records?
No, I've never been to Downey. Am I missing out?
Yeah, man. Okay, so like,
I guess I'm not even sure where it is, quite honestly, where Downey is. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, so think about like the most metal record store of all time. Like that's it.
Okay.
In Downey, California.
And
another cool thing.
Still exist?
Yeah, it's still up and running. I'll send you a link after.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Another cool thing is right down the street from there. I don't know if you're still a Metallica fan, but James Hetfield, his high school, is right down the street. And one of his guitars is like in the principal's office.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, man.
So now I'm looking at Downey on a map. This is gonna look real bad for the Downey folks, listening. But now I see it's in LA, right? It's just inland from Long Beach. Okay, I get it now. I was thinking it was someplace, out in the cuts. So I get it now. Okay, Downey. On your recommendation. I'm heading to Downey.
Yeah. So I mean, if are you big into records and stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the spot.
Okay. I mean, it's worth a trip down there.
So I basically, when I was a kid, my dad decided to just look up a record store, and that was the moment that I got into extreme music. Like, we showed up to Dark Realm Records, Bay and Rick. Like, I showed up and they had like the whole jacket outfits on with like the spikes and stuff. I'm like, whoa, what is up with this place?
Well, so what were you doing in Downey? Aren't you're an East Coast guy, right?
Yeah, I'm from Buffalo, but
okay.
When I was a kid, we went on vacation to California.
I see. Okay.
Family out there.
So,
but
for me,
yeah.
Okay. So I mean, everybody who's this into extreme music probably has their home base record store, right? But for me, it was the Record Vault, the world famous Record Vault. So that was, in San Francisco in the Russian Hill neighborhood. The first few times I went there, they were in one location, then they moved to another location by 5 blocks away. And that's where I, got my first metal records. I had some, rock records prior to that I got at Tower Records or whatever as a, 9, 10, 11-year-old. But yeah, I mentioned DRI's Dealing With It. I bought that there at the Record Vault when it came out. I think it was 85. So I was 14 in 85. Again, I'm dating myself. But
what's a record that you have that if somebody broke it, you'd kill them?
Oh, man, I have. Well, okay. One of my prized possessions are Acephalix test presses. So
nice, man.
I've got a bunch of those. And let's see. I'd have to go up there and look. But a lot of, wild colored vinyl and splatter vinyl and things like that. A couple of things.
Now, when you get those test presses, were you originally quite nervous when you played it the first time?
I can't think of a situation where I was nervous playing it, but I think honestly that every time I got a test press, it was sort of after the fact. You know what I mean? Like the label had already approved it, and for our first couple of records, the 7-inch and then our first full length, Ken Sanderson from Prank Records put those out, and we really trusted him, So I think that I've never actually listened to a test press for approval. A test cassette, maybe once with Sentient Ruin Laboratories for Decreation. And then Dave Grave at $20 Spin, who put out our last, this most recent record and the one before that. We just really trust him to know that everything sounds right and that the volume's right and like that. So yeah, I don't think I can't recall an experience of being anxious about a test press, but I do love having them,
Oh yeah, man. Like that's definitely like a dream of mine. Like I don't know exactly what the rates are on vinyl to get them printed nowadays. I remember looking
expensive.
as a kid.
It's expensive.
I remember as a kid, minimum orders were like $2,000. Is that what it is now?
I think it's close. I looked at. I have a very non-metal solo project, and I was looking at getting some vinyl pressed about a year ago. And I mean, COVID has had an effect on this too, from what I understand, and places are backed up and supplies are limited and all that stuff. Maybe it's getting better, but yeah, we were talking about a lot of money. Yeah, it was expensive. Yeah, absolute minimum order was over $1,000, and that was for not very many records. So yeah, I mean, it's just vinyl is so popular right now, and of course, cassettes are popular again, like when I was a kid, and because I had cassettes before CDs were invented, and now like CDs are kind of coming back. I know just from our.
Did you say CDs are coming back?
I mean, people order CDs from Acephalix for sure. And I mean, they're easy to ship and they're cheap to ship, and you have to worry about them getting thrashed, when like vinyl, when it ships and stuff like that. And so yeah, I mean, not super popular, but yeah, I think I've heard some rumbles about CDs coming back. I love CDs, but I'm kind of from the CD era, like when they first came out, how amazing they sounded. And you had to get Dark Side of the Moon, and on CD and in whatever, whatever year.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely cannot wait for this Christmas. I'm giving my brother a death metal cassette. First of all, like, he's just getting into metal, and second of all, I don't even think that he knows what like a cassette is. So
this is your younger brother?
Oh no. He's literally 25.
And he doesn't know what a cassette is, really.
Well, no. I just think that he hasn't really like he never really cared to use a cassette. I think he was more like CDs. I think he skipped past the cassette era.
Right, which wasn't that hard to do if you're in that sort of age range. I mean, it doesn't appeal to me particularly. There are a lot of things that I have on cassette that aren't available any other way, like old demos from the 80s and stuff. So, but slowly a lot of these demos are being pressed, in one way or another, or, a band will reissue an album and include the demo tracks and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not, the sound quality is not super great. The portability is a factor, but
yes, that is the one
the artwork's small, it's not my favorite by any means.
I think that they're pretty durable and like collectible because they're just so small. But the audio
durable,
definitely sucks.
They weren't.
What'd you say?
They weren't durable when I was a kid. We would always, of course, I mean, I guess it wasn't so much the cassette, but the cassette player, that would eat your cassette and stuff like that. That's happened to me plenty of times. I've unscrewed cassettes as a kid and tried to tape the tape back together and stuff like that. Screw it back together once you've like put a piece of Scotch tape on the to put that, connect the broken pieces of tape. Back then, of course, we would also unscrew the tape and put it in so it would play backwards too. Unscrew it and then you could flip it over. It was a really great way to play things backwards because you couldn't really do it on a turntable. It would thrash your turntable,
Yeah, it would ruin it.
If you're into that kind of thing. I sure was. I love playing stuff backwards.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think that's what led us to this this fucking evil album. So let's end it on a positive. So
that's definitely it.
Let's end it on a note of what you've been listening to, what you recommend people to listen to, and
Well, so I love that Undeath record and listen to that quite a bit. I like Funeral Chant a lot, a band called Funeral Chant from the Bay Area. I have, and I'm always going back to old stuff too. Like recently went back and listened to every Morbid Angel album, from
Yep.
A through H at least. And so gosh, you put me on the spot. I know there's other brand
Well,
new
let's
stuff.
backtrack to Morbid Angel. You're going to be seeing them on the upcoming tour?
I probably will. I saw them last time it probably wasn't last time. They've probably played, toured since then. But when Necrot and Blood Incantation opened for them, and Cannibal Corpse was the headliner, so that wasn't that long ago. That was probably 3 or 4 years ago, pre-COVID. But yes, for sure. I love them, and I love Steve Tucker,
Yeah.
Whenever you say like, oh, my favorite Morbid Angel album is blank, somebody's going to get mad, right? Somebody's going to get mad because everybody thinks Alter.
Who cares?
Whatever. But I love Gateways to Annihilation. That's like, I think that's actually my favorite. And
yeah,
his voice is amazing on that. He's so evil. So, it's one of the, there's only so many hours in the day. So I could spend, I could avoid new music entirely and just go back to, to things that I listened to around the time they came out back in the 90s and early 2000s or whatever. But, there definitely are new bands that I like. I'm just not thinking of them.
No, that's cool. I will throw a recommendation out there.
Okay.
Witch Vomit.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And
oh my God.
Yeah, they're great. And they're friends of ours for sure. We've known Casey, the guitarist, for a long time, since the early days of Acephalix. First couple of times we toured, she was in a band called Murderous, and they were amazing. And so, I love Witch Vomit, and we've been playing with them since their early days. But they're amazing. They were at Northwest Terror Fest and Killtown Death Fest. I didn't get to see them at Killtown Death Fest, but I've seen them tons of times, and yes, they're killer. And
I'm
kind of quite as well.
I'm quite curious now, what the hell they've been up to, because their last record was in 2019.
Has it really been that long?
That's what it says. Buried Beneath.
Yeah.
I'm not
2019. Sure. I'm not sure. I mean, they've been playing.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Abhorrent Rupture. That was 2021.
So, they definitely are active, and they're definitely playing. And Casey and Tony, we've known them since the sort of early era of that band. Yeah, and they are killer.
I'm like looking at Spotify is one of these like infectious things, man, because like there's like bands like Mortiferum, Tomb Mold, Undergang. All of these bands are great.
Yeah, I mean those 3 bands, Tomb Mold, I don't know them personally, but Mortiferum we did a short tour with. They're amazing. Their latest record, which I think is now probably over 2 years old, is so deep and so hypnotic. So I love their style. And then Undergang, we've known them forever too. And their first U.S. tour, we toured with them. So, they've gone through some changes and have really sort of refined their sound. But yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to add in the podcast?
Oh, I appreciate the response that Theothanatology has gotten. It came not as a surprise to me because I knew that the music was great, but just kind of like what we were talking about earlier about this being sort of a real high point in terms of death metal, and in particular, sort of death metal that's stuck to sort of the old school vibe, whether it's old school US death metal or old school European death metal, and that's sort of where we're at. And so it's been kind of overwhelming, the response, and it has opened opened up people's ears to it. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, they didn't know this band and never heard this band, and we've been around for 15 years, and this is our fourth full length. So this album is striking a chord with folks, and it's just, we really appreciate it.
Yeah. Hell yeah.